You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and it's probably about time to get all magical with friendship by analyzing the friends as depicted in the cultural phenomenon book series, Harry Potter. But there's a lot, right? There's a lot of books. There's even more movies than there are books. So this is how it's going to work. Each month I'll be joined by a friend to discuss the book for the podcast, and then we'll also discuss the movie for Patreon. So today Alison joins me to discuss the very first book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Hi, Alison.
Hello.
There she is. She was here for, what was the name of your episode? Like Brewing Friendship or...
Oh, something.
Yeah, it was about coffee, but you've been on before, and you've been on Fatalities, and you're gonna be back on Fatalities once I get my crap together. But she's here now. Yay! To celebrate the very first book, to talk about it. So, Alison, how did you come to read the Harry Potter series? Like, everyone has their own story because people have their own age group. Was it part of school? Was it part of family? Was it part of friends? Like, how did you come about doing that?
So it's actually kind of sad. My family was, we didn't have a lot of money, much like Harry.
Yes.
Or the Weasleys. So there was a summer where we didn't really have a place to live.
Oh, no.
So we were like in a pop-up trailer thing, like at a campground. And my cousin lent me the first 3 books, and they were like, he lent me his Walkman, like a cassette. It was on cassette. And
whoa.
Because like I'm also dyslexic, so like I listened and followed along in the books, and actually still have the 4th one on cassette.
Wow.
Still to this day. But yeah, so I read the first 3 and I loved them so much, and then the 4th one came out that summer, and I went to the bookstore with my cousin who showed me the books in the first place, and was like there for the release, and that was very exciting.
Yeah, how old were you, or would you have been at this time?
11 or 12, I think.
So you're about like Harry Potter's age. So did you, like you said, did you then relate to Harry and the Weasleys?
Oh, yeah. Definitely was like, oh, sweet, an owl is going to bring me a letter and tell me that I'm actually
the owl doesn't show up, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Next, you're going to tell me Santa isn't real either. Oh my goodness. Spoilers. Yeah, my journey was very different because I'm older than you, first off. And so the books started coming out when I was in college. And the first movie came out. I hadn't read the books, but I went to the movie and I saw it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, 3 days in a row. First showing was great. Second one was kind of like, oh my God. And then the third showing was great again. And then I went and read the books because I'm much more of like a TV movie person, and I'm not the age group, right? The books are written so that you kind of grow in age with Harry, and like, the books get more difficult and things like that to sort of match that age, which is one of the neat things about the series. And so, I'm reading it completely out of like, I'm like the adult that's like, yeah, Harry Potter. It's like I'm pushing kids out of the way. Excuse me. No, but by the time the last book came out, I had it pre-ordered and went to pick it up. And this is so funny. I was in graduate school. And so I drove out to the Barnes & Noble, which is like a half hour away, drive out there. But I go to McDonald's I go and get the book. I pick it up because I was too old. Like, I'm like, I can't do midnight. So I go right when they open and I get it. I get McDonald's. I eat on the way home. Then I come in and my roommate's there and I'm like, hey, Tara, I'm going in to read. Don't bother me until I come out because I have a bathroom inside my bedroom and everything. And like, I just started reading and I wasn't coming out until I was done. And about halfway through, I was like, I'm so hungry. And in my backpack from school from that week, I had a Gatorade and like a Slim Fast bar. So that's what I ate. I'm like, I gotta finish this last book.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And I think after that first one came out, I think I saw all of them at like midnight showings and stuff. So for me, not the right age group, which was intended for the book, but I'm definitely someone who's been impacted by the series and see it as like the pop culture phenomenon that it is. And there's a lot that I appreciate about it. And so I'm so glad to be able to talk about like the friendships that we're going to talk about today.
Me too.
But before we get there, I think it's important for those listening to know what our Hogwarts houses are. So you go first, Allison.
Okay, well, I am a Hufflepuff.
Ooh, ooh.
And in the first book, we don't really get to know a lot about Hufflepuffs.
They, super rude.
Yeah, they're just like, oh yeah, Hufflepuffs are blah, kind of.
Also, can we talk about like, so there's 4 houses and we'll get to this, but like, so they have a house cup and they get points for doing good things. They get points for taken away. So Hufflepuff is in 3rd out of 4 with 352 points. And Hufflepuff is the house that's like kind and loyal and friendly. And I'm like, how do they not have more points for just being good friends? I'm like, come on, Hogwarts, get it together.
Yeah. The point system's rigged, but
always towards Gryffindor.
But I have taken the like mashup quiz because I'm pretty sure in Pottermore I'm actually it says I'm a Ravenclaw.
We have the same combo. I mean, clearly, like if you were all to sort me into a house based on what I'm interested in with this podcast, it makes sense that I would be Hufflepuff. But then in the mashup, I also score high in Ravenclaw. And so is that like a Huffleclaw or Ravenpuff?
Yeah.
You know,
So I have a friend, she is I think hers was a Ravenpuff because she leans more towards Ravenclaw, but has Hufflepuff tendencies where we have Hufflepuff, or we, more Hufflepuff and have Ravenclaw tendencies.
So we're Huffleclaws.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say so.
Okay. It's official. Let's get shirts made.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm like, well, my heart tells me I'm a Hufflepuff, so I don't care what that quiz said. Like, we all know.
Can I tell you like how many times I took the Patronus quiz on Potter or whatever until I got one that I liked? But I think mine is an aardvark, and then I did until I got like a cat or a dog. There's a video of it somewhere, so I'll have to find it where I'm like, oh my God, I'm a dog or whatever, but it's actually an aardvark, which I've learned a lot about, and they deserve my respect.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to brag, but mine's an otter, and I only took it once.
You know what? The betrayal that just happened here has so many layers that listeners don't even understand.
It's true.
And so, so like we're talking about magical things, right? We're talking about the houses. So the magical schools, split into 4 houses. And then, I mean, this book doesn't have Patronuses in it yet, but you're probably listening. You've probably watched Harry Potter, unless it's like, hi, Mom, hi, Dad. Thanks for listening. But Patronus is an important part that we'll get to as we go on with the series. But so we're going to dive into those friendships, but there's something that we need to do first. Can we talk about the author of these books? It's like, let's just get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, so the author of this series created a world that so many of us identify with clearly. Me and Allison do, maybe in different ways because of different points in our life and things of that nature. But simply put, this author is a TERF, and that doesn't stand for standing up for house elves, like spew, okay, which is book 2. We'll get to it. But she has constantly and consistently tweeted and commented on transgender women, especially, but transgender people in a hurtful and many appropriate ways. And in my mind, she no longer owns this community. We do. Like the people who have taken on and love having an otter Patronus and being Hufflepuff, and us who read the books and watch the movies and get tattoos or whatever people do to celebrate the story that is Harry Potter. So let me be clear that here on Best Forevers, we don't support or condone transphobia, nor do we support this author. Instead, we support our trans friends, coworkers, students, neighbors, wizards, witches, centaurs, etc. So to discuss the series about understanding something that has impacted our lives in a positive way before the author showed herself to be exactly opposite of what she wrote about in her books.
Yeah, and I think that it really sucks.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
But if you want to enjoy these books, there are a lot of thrift stores that you can purchase them at.
Yes.
If you want to represent your house, there's a lot of great Etsy stores you can, purchase from. You don't have to continue
support
to give her money. Yeah.
And it's like, I just don't understand how she can write a book that was about like being inclusive of people and treating people in respectful ways can then now turn her back against community of people who are probably felt so welcomed by her book. So here she is just the author, but the books are done, so I guess we don't need her anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, she is one person I will not be friends with. I'm going to stand up for my trans friends and not for her. So we had to get that out of the way. Just letting people be clear that we want to celebrate the friendships, not the author. And so today we're going to talk about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And so I wrote up an overview of this whole book and a paragraph based on my most recent reading. So Alysun, you're going to have to correct me or add in whenever you see fit.
Okay.
So this book was published in 1997, and it takes on the magical world and introduces us to a famous little boy named Harry Potter, who was the one who lived the dangerous and survived from the dangerous and dark wizard Voldemort, or otherwise known as He Who Cannot Be Named. Like, people freak out when you say his name.
Yeah.
But this wizard murdered Harry's parents, and he is sent to live with his human or muggle relatives who are actually the worst. Like, they neglect him, they abuse him. He's we'll get to that. The very first point will be like, why did they let the Dursleys raise him? But he has an uncle and aunt and a spoiled and mean cousin who treat him as if he doesn't even exist. They've had him since he was little, and now as he turns 11, he finds out, despite his aunt and uncle trying to stop it, that he is in fact a wizard, and he's brought into a world where he's always belonged, but he didn't know that he belonged there, to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He welcomes the world as he learns more about magic, but learns the truth about his parents' death and that he's in fact a celebrity or infamous for being the child who stopped the evil Lord Voldemort, if you will. The book follows as he begins his schooling at Hogwarts, making friends and enemies, taking lessons in magic, and having to stop a professor from stealing the Sorcerer's Stone and helping bring Voldemort back to life and into the magical world.
Sidebar.
Correction. Amendment. Yes, please.
No, that's not a correction. So we both know the park Voldemort. So anytime, So anytime I would go to hike there, Jared would be like, "Oh, so you're going to the park who shall not be named?" Every time. Like, it was funny the first time. You can stop now.
264th time. Well, I haven't been to Voldemort. I used to go to when I went to church camp, and what I remember about that is going to Voldemort. There's this giant rock. I don't know if it's still there, but trying to be the cool kid that gets to eat lunch on top of the rock, playing games in the woods, and then sitting on this grassy area near the entrance singing songs until our parents came to pick us up. And to my family's dismay, I still remember one of the songs. And so I like to sing it to annoy. So it's rise and shine and give God the glory. And I sing it just like that. Okay. When you said sidebar, I didn't realize it was like, it's an aside. I have a story versus like, you did that wrong.
No, it was great. It sounds good.
Thank you. So after reading, Alysun, I have a couple topics that we want to talk about because the lens of this podcast is obviously friendship. So, the storyline of discovering which professor is trying to steal the Sorcerer's Stone, the rest of the faculty at Hogwarts trying to protect the stone, and like Harry and his friends trying to stop Voldemort from coming back is more of an aside or in the background to what we're going to talk about. But I think that's important to know as we talk about things like there's a stone. It's the elixir of life. You can live forever. And Voldemort has disappeared since Harry stopped him from the murder of him, of himself. And so seems like Voldemort might need some elixir to make some things happen, get back into a body and do some evil crap, you know?
Yes. So there is a lot of like unknowns. You know, we don't know why Voldemort disappeared when he tried to kill Harry.
Yeah.
Harry was a baby, so he didn't do anything to survive.
He was like, I was just being me.
I was napping. And then also a lot of people in the wizarding world don't really believe that Voldemort is truly gone.
Yeah.
And then, so like his reign was like 11 years. Yeah. And then he tried to kill Harry. Mm-hmm. And
he's been gone.
He's been gone for 11 years. And we'll find out much later why Voldemort was after Harry and all that stuff. But as of right now, it's a mystery.
Yeah. And
if you've not read them.
This first book then is more of like an introduction. It's almost like we're along with the journey with Harry and learning about the wizarding world because he doesn't have any idea.
Yeah.
So then it's also like on the journey of Harry finally being part of a world where he belongs because he's so mistreated, right? So the first topic that I want to talk about is Harry as an orphan, right? Mm-hmm. Because both his parents were murdered by Voldemort. The wizardry world brings him to the Dursleys, his aunt and uncle, and then he has a cousin named Dudley Dursley. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But so like they just treat Dudley like he is superior and king and he's super spoiled and mean, and his friends pick on Harry too. And
and not just his friends, like everyone in school, they don't want to pick him for any sporting events because they don't want Dudley's gang, is what they call him the whole time, to think that they like Harry.
Yeah.
There's no photos of Harry. There's a bunch of Dudley as a kid and growing up through the ages, and there's none of Harry. Like you wouldn't even know that there was another kid in the house.
Exactly. And like Dudley has 2 rooms. Like why does a kid need 2 rooms? Like he has a room that he lives in and then he has a room for like all his stuff. And it's like, and then it's also like they don't celebrate Harry's birthday, right?
Yeah.
And so Dudley gets all these presents. I think in the introduction of this book, he has like, last year I got this many presents and this year I have less. And so they have to like buy him more presents to shut him up and stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't see, like, they just look at their child as if he's perfect. And like anytime like Harry breathes, they're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And he actually lives in the cupboard under the staircase. Like, I mean, they don't present it as super dark, but like, I mean, they're certainly neglectful, but it is also abusive, like thinking about like how they treated him. And, you know, he wasn't able to eat the things that like Dudley ate. He has Dudley's hand-me-down, so nothing ever fits. And he just doesn't have any interaction, and they don't want to take him places. He's often sent to like a neighbor's to watch him. And so it's just one of those things like he was bullied, you know, and then like at home, there wasn't a safe space. And so it makes me like, first off, why would like Dumbledore, the professor that runs Hogwarts and supposed to be the greatest wizard, one of the greatest wizards of all time, like, why would he send Harry to live with the Dursleys? I mean, they're not part of the magic world, but he is so mistreated there. Like, why would they do that? Like, what are your thoughts there? Like, because they have some explaining to do.
I do think it is brought up in one of the books. So I think it's because of Harry's like being blood related. The house is still a protective space from some dark magic until he is of age. I'm pretty sure
he can do magic. It still seems like Dumbledore, you got like all these professors and you're that do magic and teach students, and you probably got peeps. How old are you? Like 9,000 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious, not giving an actual age, but like, why? Like, why couldn't you come up with something that would protect him in a way? Because it just seems like, so what happens is he's there and he is neglected, and then he goes to this wizardry school, and then every summer he has to come back to the place where he is mistreated. And so it's like, I would never want to leave him. Like, give him a job at Hogwarts or something. I don't know, like summer school.
Yeah.
Clean up some rooms. I don't know.
And he does make a good point of like, people are going to know his name.
Yeah.
You know, before he even knows anything. And I think that's interesting. Like, who would Harry be if he did grow up in the wizarding world? And like, would the fame have gotten to his head? Would he have been kind of like his cousin? Like, would he be like, oh, I'm hot shit?
Be like, oh God, no, we don't, you're not a hero we want to fight for anymore. Thanks.
Right.
Yeah, because he's such an underdog in a lot of ways, or in a lot of ways people can relate to him. And I think like he has no clue. Then all of a sudden he's starting to get these letters directed to him. And like even Vernon, his uncle's like, who would write to you? Like, you don't have anyone in this world. And we do all these things for you. And you should be thankful and grateful for that. But who would write you? And because it's a wizardry world, the letters just keep coming, whether, you know, Vernon gets rid of them or not, you know, to the point where they are off on an island in the middle of the water in this like shack, trying to stay away from these letters coming at them. And he's finally like, no letters. But then Hagrid shows up, and Hagrid is one of the individuals that works on the grounds of Hogwarts. And so he brings like the letter to Harry and lets him know that he's a wizard. And like, that's got to be really overwhelming, where it's just like, what? But then at the same time being like, okay, everything makes sense now. But what we start to learn is that his life is about to change, because he's now old enough to go to Hogwarts and start his schooling. So it makes you wonder, like, what sort of impact does living with the Dursleys and not having his parents, who were part of the wizardry world, impact his ability to have and make friends? Right. So like,
I think there's a really, really great moment later on where it talks about Harry, who had never had anything before to share, wants to share with Ron.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think obviously there's like the whole nature versus nurture debate. And I think a little bit of it is, no matter where Harry grew up, like his personality is still very kind.
Yeah.
You know?
It makes you wonder like how much we do like gain from our parents, even if we can't be around them, or like, you know, that mixture of, you know, his parents.
Yeah.
And then also being like, he's able to recognize like what they're doing is wrong. And like wanting to get away, and maybe seeing some satisfaction with them kind of getting theirs, but not necessarily in a way that's like, all right, I'm going to need a hitman. I need to off. But like, one of the things is you just wonder, like being mistreated, if like that would make him less able to make friends or less interested, like not being able to trust people. But in this sense, it seems like he's able to decipher who might be a good friend and who might not be. And he's like, who is a Dudley and who is not a Dudley, right? And like that is his basis. And so to me, it's like completely overwhelming, right? Because we move from the Dursleys. He finds out he's a wizard. Hagrid brings him a cake for his birthday. He's never
just the like first birthday cake.
His first birthday cake. And he's like, Harry, you're a wizard. Right? That's my Hagrid impression.
It was very good.
No, it wasn't. It was horrible. Rise and shine. I'm really good at like voices and singing and stuff.
Yeah. So good.
But like Hagrid comes and it's like, you've never told him anything. Like they had told him his parents died in a car accident and he couldn't ask any questions. And then Hagrid comes in and he's like, you're a wizard and you don't know anything. You need to learn about your family. And then there's this quote from page 57 I like. Quote, Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes, but Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure there had been a horrible mistake, end quote. So even all of this is happening, and he's got his first birthday cake, and he's been told that he's part of a wizardry world, and there's something else besides the Dursleys. He doesn't know exactly what it is, but it's almost like he has found his place in the world where he belongs, even though he doesn't really know anything about it yet, right?
Yeah.
And that he's like, I'm going to find out about my family and I'm going to be able to go to school. And maybe most importantly, I won't have to live with the Dursleys from September to probably May, June.
Yeah.
So Hagrid we meet and he went to Hogwarts and he is, would you say staff? He is the groundskeeper.
Yeah.
Takes care of
the keeper of keys.
Yes.
So I think that, it's basically just kind of like a groundskeeper because Filch is also kind of like a groundskeeper.
He's the caretaker of the school. And then Hagrid is outside the school.
Yeah. So we also learned that Hagrid really likes animals and he is one of the few people who can go into the Forbidden Forest and not get attacked.
Because he's a giant.
He's a half giant. His mom was a giant. We don't learn this in this book, but I'm just being a nerd.
Showing your whole self, aren't you?
Yeah, I sure am.
No, I love it. You get in here, correct me, and you're like, actually, he's a giant because his mom was a giant and his dad wasn't.
Yes, yeah.
But some of this is important to explain, and then each book is only going to be viewed through friendship, and there's so many layers to the stories. And my friend Adri hosts Accio Politics, where they go through each chapter of every single book and talk about the politics of the topic going on. There's so many different ways that you can talk about Harry Potter series. And so let's get in there, let's learn more about Hagrid, because we might not later. Let's do it. I think that Hagrid is his sort of gatekeeper to this magical world. Yeah. And it's his first sort of his first onboarding session where, they go to the wizard's bank and they go and get stuff for him to go to school. And he sees some magic to get into the magic, shopping area, Diagon Alley. And he's that first gatekeeper. And so it makes me go do you see Hagrid as a mentor or do you see Hagrid as Harry's first friend?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I think it is a little bit of both. So I think at first he's more mentor. Yeah. Like you said, he's showing Harry all the wizarding things, and Hagrid even keeps saying, "Oh, I forget how much you don't know about our people." Another thing too about Hagrid is, in the first chapter, he is the one that gets Harry out of the house that his parents had been murdered in and takes him to the Dursleys. He meets Dumbledore there, which in my mind becomes significant later in book 7. But
hey, dork. We're in book 1.
Right. So he brings Harry there on a flying motorcycle, and Harry even talks about having a dream about a flying motorcycle. And then Hagrid just showing up and being so kind with the cake and just showing him the worlds that Harry truly belongs in.
I feel like Hagrid, I'm glad you brought that up, even though it becomes important in book 7. I think it's important to bring up because I think Hagrid probably has this connection to Harry because of his parents, his losing his parents, saving him, taking him to the Dursleys, working with Dumbledore and helping, and then coming and getting Harry to like get him started for school. And then I was kind of disappointed that he had to go back and live with the Dursleys for a month and like try to figure out to get to this train station. I was like, Hagrid, what are you doing? You can't help Harry out. But right. That's beside the point, because Harry will make some friends along the way. But I think there is like a special connection that is made, and that as it starts out, it's a lot of informing, like it's a training session. And so the Daily Prophet is the newspaper, and you don't know about Quidditch, and which is like their sport, kind of like soccer, but on brooms, and
yeah,
we'll talk about that more too. But I just think like you start to see, so I'll be the nerd now, that you see even in this first book and beyond that they grow to be friends. And I think that Hagrid has a connection with Harry that he's never had with maybe anyone else. And in some ways can kind of see like maybe in conjunction with Dumbledore might be like a father figure, but more like a big brother friend. And like a half child, like
oh, he also gives Harry Hedwig. He buys Hedwig as a
present.
Yes. And like that month back at the Dursleys, I think was like really beneficial for Harry and Hedwig's relationship, because they became, friends too. Because like Harry mentions when everyone's getting like letters in the Great Hall, Hedwig will still come, even though she doesn't have any letters, just to like nibble on his bacon and say, hey, that wasn't a euphemism. But but yeah, so I think like there is a friendship there that like Hedwig is like, when he does go back to the Dursleys, a great magical friend, like a reminder of like, this isn't my real life.
Yeah.
Hogwarts is.
This magic. Is where I'll be able to go. And it's like look forward to, and also like a bonding session. And I don't even have that on here. And I've done episodes about being friends with animals. And like one of my besties is sitting right behind me, Ferguson. Like, and so I think animals are really important. And all students bring a cat, a toad, a rat, or no? Or does Ron have
rat,
to bring the rat?
I think he is like allowed, but I don't even think he's really on the list. Rats and toads are old fashioned.
Toads are old fashioned, but like cats or owls are like what's cool.
Yeah. But owls are so useful that like who doesn't want an owl?
Well, I mean, can I have both? Can I have an owl and a cat?
Right,
and
that's what I want.
Just be like 3 best friends that anyone ever had.
Yes.
But I think that's a good point. Like, so he has a month to like read the books. He has a month to like bond with Hedwig. And then like, Hagrid gets him his first present. So it's like, there's this level of like, there might not be a line to what kind of relationship that they have because of the trauma at the beginning of the life that Hagrid's there for, the kindness that he brings in a world full of abuse. And then later sort of like, because he even checks in with Harry after like the first week of classes, do you want to come down for tea? And, like he checks in with them and invites them down to his hut on the grounds. And so I think that's one of the friendships we see develop that might change in terms of, is this like a brotherhood? Is this a friendship? Is this a mentorship? And that's something to look for, I think, when reading the books. But we certainly have mentioned like Harry is the boy who lived. And so he's not famous back in the Muggles world, right? Like no one could give a crap about him there. But when he goes with Hagrid to Diagon Alley, this is from page 69, it's, welcome back, Mr. Potter, welcome back. I'm so proud, Mr. Potter, I'm just so proud. And it's like, he's like, what the hell I don't even know what I did. Like, what? And he even goes on to say, like, the people are just fawning over him when he's going to get his wand, when he is going to get his robes, and he's in the magical world, and they all know who it is because he has a scar on his forehead left behind by Voldemort in the shape of a lightning bolt, which is quite an unusual scar. And this is, they probably for 11 years be like, where's Harry Potter? And now it's like, oh my God, he's here.
Right. Well, and there's one guy who even saw him in a muggle shop and like shook his hand. And then Harry meets him in Diagon Alley and he's like, oh, I've met you before. And the guy was like so jazzed. He went back in line to shake Harry's hand like a couple of times.
She is so jazzed. I love when people use that word. And that person was probably totally jazzed. But he's like, that's hard for him. He has not even made it to the school. These are adults.
Yeah.
Right? So he says on page 86, quote, everyone thinks I'm special. All those people in the leaky cauldron, Professor Quirrell, so he meets one of his professors, Mr. Ollivander, but I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect great things? I'm famous and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when the night my parents died, end quote. So he's going to the school knowing that everyone's going to know him. He knows nothing about magic. So how can he live up to these expectations? He doesn't know why he lived. He doesn't even know until recently that his parents were murdered by a dark wizard, right? So he's learning everything at once and like how overwhelming. And now he's supposed to get to school where, people essentially like immediately are like, oh my God, you're Harry Potter. I heard Harry Potter's on the train. And then even there's a point on the very first morning of school, it says everyone was whispering about Harry as soon as he leaves the dorm. They're staring at him, following him, talking about him. Like it reminds me of when I was a teenager, it'd be like Corey Haim and River Phoenix and Christian Slater oh my God, Christian Slater. Like that's how everyone acts.
Yeah.
They're just swooning over him. But like, that's got to be a lot to live up to. So it makes me wonder, like, how do you think he handles the celebrity?
I mean, for the most part, I think he handles it like the most normal way you can. Like, he doesn't really like try and get anything out of it. He doesn't think that he is, this powerful wizard or whatever people are putting on him. Like he's just there. I think he's really relieved when he realizes that everyone kind of starts at zero, like Ron, who is from a magical family. He doesn't really know that much more than Harry when it comes to the studies and stuff like that. But like he seems very humble about it.
It's just one of those things like I think you mentioned this before. It's like, do you want to become like Dudley? Like, nah, like that's no, thank you. And I think that he doesn't really understand why. So he has nothing to compare it to. It's not like he's seeing a famous person or sees someone who's celebrity or infamous or, something like that for like an unknown reason. It's not like he's LeBron James who's good at basketball. It's like something happened in his life and now he's famous, right? Like, so that's, you got to be even, that's like a better equivalent would be like being born LeBron James's child, right? Like, it's just like, it's just your life. And like, everyone's like, oh my God, and staring and doing all these things. And I think that it could be an issue for him making friends because I think it comes to that people sometimes only want to be around people that can provide them some benefits. Like I can get like this positive association by being friends with someone who's famous or, that they might have ill intentions. And I think we see that when he meets Draco Malfoy in Diagon Alley, and he doesn't know who it is, and Draco doesn't know it's Harry Potter, but the way he talks, he's kind of like, I wouldn't want to be friends with this person because they're so concerned about families and what's the right sort. And we'll talk about Draco in a little bit because he's, I think, really important to the friendship story, or maybe the unfriendship story of this book. But I think that he does go about it in a very sort of like this isn't a big deal. I'm just Harry. I think we see it later. He gets frustrated because he thinks one of the professors doesn't like him, Professor Snape. And I think he gets frustrated because he's like, how would you expect him to know all these things? And why would you call him out on the first day and call him a celebrity and like point it out to everyone as if he hasn't been abused for the last 11 years?
Yeah.
Like, come on, Snape, step it up. Like, he's probably gone through. You don't need to be a jerk about it. But he also, okay, what book is this? But he also has a little something with Harry's dad, like a little competition and some ill feelings, perhaps.
Yeah, I am glad you said abuse, because I feel like a lot of people gloss over the fact that Snape is an abuser and kind of a tyrant a little bit. Like, not just with Harry, but with Neville as well. You'll see in book 3, like, Neville's deepest, darkest fear is Professor Snape. Like, that's messed up and sad. And I don't care that Snape had a crush on a girl one time 100 years ago. He's an asshole.
Yeah. And it just so happens that girl, marries someone else, and then they had Harry as a kid, and then those two people were murdered. And then 11 years later, you are mistreating him in class.
Yeah.
Like, come on. And it's like, he's already abused in his home, and then he's going to come to school, which is a place that he's excited to be. And so and he doesn't understand why Snape would have a problem with him. So it's like, Snape, you're the adult here. Harry is 11. He was not alive when you had this beef with his dad, or he was a baby. So why, like that's where you kind of need to look in the mirror and be like, maybe I'm being a little problematic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, sorry. Yeah. So now, so it's like, he's, we talked about him like having maybe some difficulties or being able to decipher friends because of living with the Dursleys, meeting Hagrid, and then maybe some level of difficulty because of celebrity. And even though Hagrid leaves him to find his way to get to Hogwarts, and they leave from platform 9 3/4. But when you go to that stop, there's a 9 and a 10, and there's no 9 3/4. And so he's like, how do you get on this train? And so that's when we meet the Weasley family. We meet Mrs. Weasley, who's one of my favorite characters.
I love her.
She has a small part in this book, so I'll be jamming on her later when I could talk about her more and be like, oh, love the mom. But she's helping her sons get on the train, and Ron is the same age as Harry, so it'll be his first year. And so he overhears them talking about muggles and things like that. He's like, they must be wizards. And so he's like, excuse me, ma'am, or something along that lines. And so she's like, do you need help? So she helps him get through to the train station. Her twins help him get his trunk on the train, and they kind of do the like, you're Harry Potter, even though the mom's like, don't you dare do that. He watches from the train as she says goodbye to her children, which I think is really interesting, as he's sitting there and like the Dursleys are just like, bye. They're like, I'm surprised they even gave him a ride, and he's in a train compartment by himself, and Ron comes in. And so what do you think about Harry and Ron's meeting? Are they friends at first meet? Do you think like they were destined to be best friends right then?
I mean, I don't know about first meet, but I think they were destined a little bit. Like, they both are kind of underdogs a little anyway, and they both have things to live up to. So Ron has brothers that he always has to live up to. Harry has his fame that he has to live up to. Yeah. So they definitely do have a lot in common. And then two, I think we were kind of talking a little before this, like boys this age too are just like, you just put them together and they're friends. And they hate girls.
Like, ew, girls.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about when we get to the third part of the friendship, Hermione, which seems to take a long time in the book. I was like, they are mean. But yeah, I think that as soon as he sort of sees them, like, I feel like he's able to sort of read the Weasleys as generally good people. The mom was helpful. The boy comes and sits with him, and Harry didn't even have money until Hagrid come, and now he has money. And so, as you mentioned earlier, he like buys everything off the cart, and like Ron's like, I have a corned beef sandwich, and my mom never remembers that I hate corned beef. And he's like, I'll trade you for it. So he says, quote, go on and have a pasty, said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all of Harry's pasties, cakes, and candies. The sandwiches lay forgotten, unquote. That's on page 102. And so when they're on the train, they talk about the candy, they talk about the trading cards, which gives some information that will help them with their sort of the case, if you will. If you think of them as like investigators, the case for the Sorcerer's Stone, they get some information there that they don't realize they need until later. They talk about eating like the every flavor beans, and like Jelly Bellies are every flavor beans of things that taste good. The worst flavors like buttered popcorn and coconut, in my opinion. But like these every bean flavors are like booger.
Yeah. Grass, vomit.
Ugh. Yeah. So I think you see that they bond there. And then, you know, I think it's just like you said, like the two boys are just together, and so they become friends. And I think there's two particular things that like stick out later throughout the book, other than them being together and being friends. One is that they both are at Hogwarts over winter break. And so Harry's not going home to the Dursleys, and the Weasleys are going to visit one of their sons in Romania who does stuff with dragons. And so the twins, Percy and Ron, all stay. And so it's like a break where Ron and Harry really get to bond. Like they have the dorm to themselves. They're sitting at the seats by the fire. They're eating all this food. They're talking about their enemy Draco, about him being expelled, even if it's like not a good idea to get him expelled.
Yeah.
And they play like wizard's chess, and that's where like the pieces come to life. And so like I feel like they have this time where they can bond over other things. And of course they always get lost going to class together. I feel like that's a theme.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is when Harry loses points for Gryffindor House, he says the only person who stuck by me was Ron. And that everyone was mad at him for like really putting Gryffindor in a bad place to not win House Cup. And why can't I talk? That sounded like I said Slytherin and Sutherland combined together. Kiefer Slytherin.
Oh, that's awesome. Kiefer Slytherin.
Well, Kiefer Sutherland always played like the most evil characters. Stand By Me. I mean, just like Lost Boys, everything was in. He might as well be. I bet he's Slytherin. Anyways, but Slytherin is. Why do I keep saying it? Allison's like crying. Say it for me. I can't do it. Slytherin. Did I do it right? Oh, that's gonna be a great clip. Oh man, that's really gonna sell the show. I think. Really people to be like, we have to listen to this episode. Slytherin. Anyways, that evil dark wizard house essentially has won for like the last 6 or 7 years or whatever, and so they're like
7 years.
7 years. So like they're all mad at Harry, but Ron was the only one who stood by him. So I think those are like moments that stand out. But actually I think there's other moments like with Draco that stand out more than maybe like I think the idea here is that we're just supposed to, I think, assume that Harry and Ron are just going to be besties, right? And I'm okay with that. Like at first meet or at getting to know each other, you know, being in the same dorm with the other first year boys, and just like maybe the other boys like Neville Longbottom, who's Gryffindor and like the sweetest baby angel to ever exist. And like people are mean to him. He can't remember stuff. They take his items. Like he gets teased a lot. He's like, it's just like, I see like Harry and Ron defending Neville a lot. And I think like maybe some of the other boys like Neville might be too like intimidated by Harry by being like famous, right?
Yeah.
And then of course my dog is named after Seamus Finnegan who's like a very side character. Yeah. And I'm like, why aren't Seamus and Harry best friends? Because they didn't share a compartment. And then Seamus just, everything blows up in his face, literally. So I don't know how safe they would be on some of their adventures with Seamus.
Right, if he's just blowing up.
But yeah, but don't you feel like it's just kind of like Ron and Harry? It's just like, okay, they're together. We're sort of done for this book for now.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, and I think there's a lot of like hanging out in the common room, which is like everybody. There's not so much like just the first year boys dorm room.
Yep.
And so maybe if there was more of that, or we saw more of that, they would be all closer. But but no, it's just like Harry and Ron are ride or die, you know?
Ride or die right away. Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, it's done.
Yep.
But I think that leads to soon after meeting Ron, Harry meets Draco. And
technically he met Draco first in Diagon Alley, but
But he didn't know it was Harry Potter.
True.
And Harry Potter didn't know who he was, but he disliked him. Right?
Yeah, because he was just such a tool.
Yeah, but he basically is telling him all sorts of stuff about like how his family is great. And he's just like, this kid is a weirdo.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't like his vibe. And then Draco has to find Harry on the train. And like, I heard Harry Potter was here. And so I like to read some of the quotes from this first train meeting when they know who each other is, right?
Okay.
This quote, you'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there, end quote. And Harry says, quote, I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself. Thanks, he said coolly. Page 109. Draco again, quote, be careful, I worry you, Potter. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you, end quote, page 109. Right there. Weasleys as riffraff. What, because they have a lot of kids, they don't have a lot of money? F off. And that Hagrid, oh my God, why are you othering Hagrid? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Most people be like, this guy's a jerk face.
Yeah.
Don't want
and I
anything to do
think
with
part
him.
of it too is like the Weasleys are like they don't think that they're necessarily better than Muggles, you know? They are friends to Muggles, which is a thing that Malfoy's family doesn't believe in.
No.
And then, with Hagrid, I mean, we do learn that he got expelled from school and all that stuff. And so, I could see like the Malfoys, and he's half giant, but I could see the Malfoys being like, he's, you know.
I feel like this is where the author got things right in the book and then went real wrong in life. Right? Because I think what we have here is like an analogy to racism or elitism or, you know, things like that, right? Where getting at these sort of things where, you know, Harry isn't going to judge people based on those things. It's like, he's going to judge you for being an a-hole, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's really hard to grasp where the author went wrong. But again, we're not talking about her. We're talking about her experience. Do you think that Draco wanted to be friends with Harry? And if so, why do you think he wanted to be friends with Harry? Because Harry lived in a cupboard for 11 years. So
I think back to what you were saying about people just wanting to be friends with famous people because they're famous.
Yeah.
I mean, one of like Slytherin's traits are being like cunning and ambitious. So like having friends who are ambitious and being in that same like atmosphere. I can't stop thinking about Slughorn, who we'll meet later. Like he collects people who are famous.
Yeah.
And he's around those people so he can get those benefits. But yeah, because I mean, we also find out later that Draco's family, they were on Voldemort's side.
Yeah, so that's why I'm like, why would he want to be friends with, other than he might think that Harry might go to the dark side, so to speak. And so one of the things is they get sorted into the houses. So there's a sorting hat that's magical. It's placed on them. And Harry, when he gets done, he's just like, not Slytherin, not Slytherin. And he's like, the sorting hat's like, not Slytherin. You could do great things there. So I think it's always sort of like Voldemort and Harry are sort of yin and yang, like they're connected, and that he could be in Gryffindor and do great things that way, or he could go in Slytherin. God damn it, Slytherin, and do great things there. But what are great things in Slytherin, right?
Yeah, and at this point, like I would assume Draco's family doesn't believe that Voldemort is in a position to have power again. So, and maybe Draco's also like, well, Harry must have some sort of power because he defeated Voldemort.
Yeah.
So like
that would be impressive, to be friends with someone who had some power that maybe you can benefit from. And I think honestly, they are enemies because they do have like differing views of the world or beliefs about the world. Like Harry doesn't have the similar thinking as Draco, and I think he sees Draco as similar to his cousin Dudley and cannot stand Dudley, so therefore uses that sort of to decipher like, this person is not someone I want to be friends with. And someone like, also when someone comes up to you and tells you who you can't be friends with, I'd be like, that sounds like a controlling friend and no thanks. And so I think they become enemies because Harry's like, no, I don't want to be friends with you. And I think that is insulting to Draco. And I think he's offended by that, and it sort of creates a competition. And I think what's really interesting about Draco here is that throughout the whole book, like Harry and Draco are enemies, right? Like Draco like wants to fight him, and he's like, let's do a midnight duel. But then when Harry goes, it was like a trick, and so that he would get in trouble. So Draco wasn't actually going to fight him. Like he makes fun of Ron, he makes fun of Harry, he makes fun of Neville. He does all these things. He makes comments about like Harry can't go home for break, but Harry's like, this is gonna be my best Christmas ever, right? Yeah. Like, and one of the greatest gifts ever, he gets an invisibility cloak, which comes in super handy when you're doing like
spy shit into the library. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're 11. It does increase in danger and style as they get older. But I think that what happens is because there's a common enemy, that Ron and Harry can become closer. And then later Hermione. So I actually think like sometimes having an enemy, when you both dislike the same person, you can become best friends.
Yeah.
Now I think they were friends before Draco came in that compartment. Like I think they had bonded, but when you both don't like the same person, then you have something to talk about. And they do that over break. Imagining Draco getting expelled together. And I think like that's a way that people can bond, is like, hey, you hate them too, me too. All right, let's talk about them and become besties.
I was just gonna say, I do feel bad for like Crabbe and Goyle because
his sidekicks.
They're just, Draco's only friends with them because they're bigger and they can help beat people up when he's a little asshole to people. But like it's not a fulfilling friendship for them. It can't be, like, there's no, I mean, Draco, he would drop them and so fast.
Yeah.
If, I don't know, one of them stopped growing or something, like if they weren't
doing what he said. And that's the thing, is like, I think they're a little bit scared of him, but as we sort of discover in the book and Harry even calls Draco out for us, is you're a lot braver on the ground and when you got Crabbe and Goyle on your side. And so I think like it boosts his confidence to have the two of them. But I also think Draco is, for lack of like maybe not being too harsh to an 11-year-old, is a coward. I can't think of anything that would be like the 11-year-old version of that. but like for some reason they don't realize that he is like Crabbe and Goyle, right?
Yeah.
And so like I think they're intimidated by him, and I would be scared of Draco's dad. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Like, don't look at me.
Right.
With your shiny ice blue eyes that are going to murder me.
For real.
Yeah, Jason Isaacs is great as Malfoy's dad, who we meet in book 2. I was about to say movie 2. We're talking about the books, Alysa. Jason Isaacs isn't in the book. Can you tell that I'm a TV movie person over books? I'm like, oh, Jason Isaacs as Malfoy's dad is where it's at. But I think that brings us to sort of, I mean, we've talked about Neville throughout, and we'll get to him in a minute, but I think that brings us to like one of the last topics of friendship, and that's about Hermione. So anyone who might be familiar with Harry Potter knows it's Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And so rereading the book, I was like, it's like Ron and Harry, and then like, what's up with, where's Hermione at? And so like, I think Harry and Ron are mean to her. So why are they mean to Hermione? And also, why would they defend Neville but not Hermione? What are your thoughts on that?
I do think a part of it is like the whole 11-year-old boy thing. And then too, a little bit like Hermione is a little annoying with her. Like she knows everything. Neville doesn't know anything. He's kind of pathetic at first. And then until the 7th movie, then he gets kind of hot. But
Neville Longbottom, the actor, I was like,
I know.
What a glow up.
Is some magic.
Their magic does exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, she's always, she does know a lot of things. Even Harry, she was like, oh, you're in this book and that book and that book. Like, I've read all about you. And he's just like, yo, I just met you. I don't know what's happening.
She's definitely like the definition of someone who's book smart and then is like showing people that she is smart. And maybe she isn't like this, but then she comes to a school and that's what she has to prove, or that's like she has to meet those expectations because both of her parents are muggles. They're dentists, right? Yeah. So they're doctors. So like, it's like she has to live up to that. And I don't like that they call her bossy in the book just because I'm like, language choice, like it's always like genderized or whatever, but she is kind of like, guys, I wouldn't do that, or like you're gonna break the rules, and that's not good, and then they kind of rub off on her. So there's a couple things that come up with Hermione, but they seem to like be annoyed by her for most of the book, or the first 2 months of school at least. And so on Halloween, they're in charm class and they can't get their feathers to levitate. And of course, Hermione gets it because she gets most everything. The only thing she doesn't get right away is flying, which Harry does, which I think is interesting. So after class, Ron is complaining. He calls her, she's a nightmare. I can't do a British accent to do the movie version of Ron, but it's like, she's a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And so she hears him. Harry's like, I think she heard you. And Ron mentions like, well, she knows she doesn't have any friends. And so they don't see her in classes. They don't see her in the Great Hall for dinner. She's been in the bathroom crying all day because like that like hurt her feelings. And so during the dinner, the Professor Quirrell comes running into the hall saying there's a troll in the dungeon. I love how he's like, I thought you ought to know. And then he faints. And I'm like, aren't you the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor? Like, why are you freaking out about a troll? Like, go take care of it. And then let us know we're safe. But Dumbledore is like, all the prefects need to take the students back to the dorms. But then here's a moment where things change. Harry's like, Hermione doesn't know about the troll. We have to find her. So they, of course, see some other stuff that goes to the Sorcerer's Stone. And like they're, trying to resolve all of that. But they go into a bathroom and they see the troll. They lock the troll in, but that's where Hermione's been crying. So they try to go in and like distract the troll and take care of it. And Harry's able to... Is it Harry or Hermione? But they're able to get the troll's weapon, his, club, to levitate.
It's Ron.
Oh, it's Ron. All right.
Yeah.
But then it knocks the troll out with his club, and the professors come in, and Hermione lies. She doesn't say she was in there crying because they called her a nightmare. She says, I went in there thinking I could take care of the troll myself. And I was like, oh, this is the first time this girl has ever lied to a teacher.
Yeah.
And so she takes the blame. They get points taken away, etc. And then back at their dorm, she says, thanks. And I like this quote. But from that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up looking at each other as friends, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them.
Yeah.
So like that was the moment. And that's something that tracks with friendship, is that if you experience something together, traumatic or otherwise, there's like some level of bonding that takes place. And so I think that goes together. And then what you see after that is like during Quidditch, Harry loses control of his broom, and Hermione discovers that it looks like Snape is trying to get Harry to fall off the broom. So she gets over to that side of the fan stands, and she sets fire to Snape's robes, and that disconnects. So Harry isn't harmed, and he catches the snitch, and Gryffindor wins. And like, But like that, Hermione was looking out for him, and then went and used. There was a resolution to what happened, right?
Yeah.
And then also she breaks the rules. She goes. She doesn't want to go, but she goes when they're supposed to have the midnight duel. So this is the night that Harry, Hermione, and Neville lose all the points for Gryffindor. But like she doesn't want to go. But she does go, and so they help Harry get Hagrid's dragon up to the top of the tower so that they can. So Charlie, Ron's brother, who takes care of dragons or whatever he does in Romania, his friends can take the dragon. So they use the invisibility cloak. And then, Draco is like, there's going to be a dragon up here because he's trying to get Harry busted. And Professor McGonagall's like, this is nonsense. But then Harry and Hermione are taken to McGonagall's office, and Neville is there too. Neville had been trying to find them because of the story Draco had told him. The professor thinks they made up the dragon to get Draco out of bed and in trouble. And so then Neville thinks that these people have then like betrayed him in a way. Like, so he feels hurt. And McGonagall gives them detention, takes 50 points from each of them. And so now they're down 150 points in the house. And so I think in the House Cup race. And I think so you see Hermione starting to bend the rules in which to get things right, if you will.
Yeah.
So she has a code, but she still breaks the rules now. So Ron and Harry have been like bad influence on her.
A little bit. Like they even mentioned like Hermione would never let us copy her, but if she reads over our homework, we get the right answers anyway.
Yeah, like she's like, you're gonna learn. You're not gonna copy at me. If we're gonna do this, you're gonna learn. And so she is definitely like the book smarts, and then you have like they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and then that all comes together to sort of the idea of these friends working together, which then we'll see as a theme throughout the rest of the books. Plus maybe some conflicts and some other things happening that I'll talk about in each one of these episodes. But basically, when you see them really working together, it focuses on the Sorcerer's Stone and the professors trying to steal it and trying to figure out, they need to figure out who Nicholas Flamel is. So they have to do library searches. Well, they need Hermione to do that. And then it becomes like the end of the year. So they're studying, and Hermione has nagged them with color-coded study schedules. But then like they go to go get the Sorcerer's Stone because they discover that Voldemort is going to use it to come back, and Harry believes come back and kill him. So they need to get the Sorcerer's Stone first, especially because Dumbledore is away. So basically, Ron, Hermione, and Harry about to leave the Gryffindor house in the invisibility cloak, and Neville's like, He stands up to him. He's like ready. He's like, I'm going to fight you.
I'll fight you.
And then Hermione's like, the only one who knows how to do magic is like, does a body bind spell, and they leave him behind. And so what they end up having to do is go through a series of these magical, what do you call it? Events?
Trials, basically.
Trials, yes, exactly, to get to the Sorcerer's Stone. So they have to get past the 3-headed dog. And so Harry's like playing the flute that Hagrid got him for Christmas. And so they jump through trap door and then they land in a plant. And like as they struggle, it gets tighter and tighter. And Hermione's the one that figures out how to get him out of the plant, right?
Yes, which that part is really funny because she's like, oh yeah, like fire or light, deters the plant. And Ron was like, well, brings up, he said something and she's just like, I don't have any wood. And Harry's got to be like, are you a witch or are you not? Like
you don't she need forgets. Wood. You have a wand. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So then they go to the next room and it's a bunch of keys with wings flying around. They have to find the right keys. So then, Harry's skill as the seeker of the Quidditch team comes into play. And so they move on to the next one. And then the next one is the chessboard, which is Wizard's chess.
Which Ron is really good at.
Yep.
Ron realizes, though, like in order to win the chess game, he's going to have to sacrifice himself in order for the other ones to move on, which would be so hard to like have to play and think about your piece, but then also your two friends so they don't get knocked out.
Yeah.
And then,
and to be able to be like, yeah, this is what needs to happen, but I will sacrifice myself because you'll be able to carry on. I know this is my part in this puzzle and then y'all need to move on. And so, that is, and in the movie, it's really an interesting scene too. But we'll get to the movie in a little bit. But then they move to the next room and there's like a dead troll. So they're like, well, I'm glad we didn't have to fight that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then the next room is like these different bottles and it's, is it potions? But no, it's logic. They have to figure out what of the potions or what of the bottles is going to help Harry move through the fire that's in front of him, but there's only enough for one person. So Harry goes, but when they're in the room doing the logic puzzle and it's like Harry has to move on, they have this conversation. Hermione's like, Harry, you're a great wizard, And he says, I'm not as good as you. And she's like, me? Books and cleverness, there are more important things, friendship and bravery. And Harry, be careful. So like this moment of like friendship is more important than who's the better wizard, but Harry's the one that needs to go on and fight Voldemort coming back. So Harry goes, he goes back to get help, to get Dumbledore. And then what you see is that Harry has to face the professor who is trying to steal the Sorcerer's Stone. And it's not Professor Snape. It's Professor Quirrell, the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher who's been wearing a turban, which has covered up Voldemort's weird face on the back of his head.
Yeah. Yes. That's so weird. So Quirrell, like we hear from Hagrid earlier in the series that Quirrell did some traveling and he meets Voldemort during his travels. And he's kind of living this like half-life type thing. And so he somehow is like, his head is on the back of Quirrell's head.
He's like taking over part of his body to stay alive. And it's like sucking the life out of Professor Quirrell. Like he gets skinnier, he's pale. Like he comes across as actually fairly pathetic, which is why I think they think it's Snape, because Snape is like openly mean, whereas Quirrell's sort of like stuttering and like all these things that people use to like make judgments about people as like and underestimate them. And so like they don't even put it together that it's Professor Quirrell and not Professor Snape, who is trying to protect the Sorcerer's Stone. And so, it's Harry is able to get the Sorcerer's Stone and Dumbledore gets there in time to save Harry, but Harry is unconscious and, wakes up in the hospital bed to like, the recount, like, okay, what happened? So like helping the readers get through it. And like Harry gets to ask Dumbledore questions about stuff and he's getting some answers. And then Ron and Hermione come in, Hagrid comes in. So it's like all the people that are meaningful and they all get to tell their stories, all that kind of stuff.
I do want to also go back real quick and just mention, some things that'll be,
coming up,
something to think about. So we do learn when Harry is talking to Dumbledore in the hospital wing that Snape and his dad, James, Harry's dad, James, they were in fact at Hogwarts together, and they hated each other. And then James did something Snape can never forgive, and that is saved his life. So there are some correlations between Malfoy and Harry. And then too, so Snape did try to protect Harry his first year there because he was hoping that it would like repay that debt. Yeah. So yeah, he did help like try and make sure Harry didn't get knocked off his broom.
Yeah, he was trying to save Harry, but it's like, can you go about it differently with your delivery style?
Yeah. Can you not berate somebody publicly, an 11-year-old boy publicly?
Yeah. And I think like maybe that first day was like a struggle for Snape, but it's like, okay, someone's trying to hurt Harry Potter. I got to fix this, even if it looks like he's the one doing it. And like, it's because again, it's like people have perceptions and they make judgments. Like Snape is mean. And so they like assume he must be a bad wizard. And it's like, maybe he's just like sick of his job. He wants to be defense against a dark arts teacher. He never gets it. He had a crush on a girl once and it ruined his life apparently. And like, maybe he's just like unhappy with being a teacher. And being around all these little brats all the time.
Right.
Who are out in the middle of the night in invisibility cloaks. Like, just go to bed. Right?
Yeah. I am in a Facebook group that's like, it's like something like Snape is an incel or something along those lines.
Poor Snape. I think he's a little misunderstood at times.
At times.
We'll see. We don't want to give everything away about Snape. There's so much more to come. And I like how we can drop these little hints, you especially, because you're more of the mega nerd than I am. Probably because you read it at a formative age, whereas I read it more because it was a pop culture phenomenon and I find that fascinating. And like read it as like a college student after I saw the movies. But then we end this book where they are at the dinner, the closing dinner, if you will. And Harry goes, and of course, everyone's like, oh my God, because what does Dumbledore say? What happened between you and Professor Quirrell's private, which means everybody knows.
Yes, yeah. So the whole school knows, yeah.
So there's another level of like the celebrity, right? And then, and Slytherin, I said it right this time, has won the House Cup, but Dumbledore's like, oh, we need to take recent events into account. So Ron gets 50 points for the best game of chess. Hermione Granger gets 50 points for cool use of logic in the face of fire. Harry Potter for nerve and courage. That's 60 points. And so now they're tied with Slytherin. And then Neville Longbottom, he gets 10 points. And this is what Dumbledore says. Quote, there are all kinds of courage. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but much more to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom, end quote.
I just got goosebumps. Is that weird?
And then Gryffindor wins. And he's like, we have to change the decorations. And he's just like the clapper or whatever. And it's like, it changes to the Gryffindor red. And then it's like the greatest night of Harry's life.
Yeah.
And so like I like that we can drop like all this like stay tuned.
There's
stuff coming, and we got so much more to talk about with friendship. But certainly if there's anything that you think Allison and I should have talked about today, let us know.
Yes.
Tell us your Patronus, tell us your Hogwarts house. Tell us if you think Draco and Harry could be friends. Tell us what you think about Hermione and them as friends. Like, let's hear it all. Tell us everything. Tell us the things where you're like, actually, Harry isn't a good friend and you missed some stuff. Like, correct us. Give us amendments and notes. And the next episode will be with my friend Crystal, and we'll be talking about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and it will come out in August. So until next time, think about how Harry needed friendships in the worst way, because without our friends, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.